On today's episode of Locked On Suns, did the Suns get their swagger back? Are they ready to dominate? Or was it more like deja vu? We'll get into it all on the show. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Wednesday night, Thursday morning. I'm probably posting this early because I'm going to the men's national team game. You didn't need to know that, but that's the reality. You might be hearing this Wednesday night. Either way, welcome back to the Everydayers. If you have not made this show part of your daily listening routine, getting locked onto your favorite team, hit follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. If you are on YouTube, hit the bell. Give me a comment on what you think is going to happen in Game 3. That's, of course, what we're here to talk about. We're going to look back a little at Game 2, look forward a little at Game 3. You can also follow along at Locked On PHX Suns on Twitter, where you can give me your 7 words or less game take on game nights, which I promise you will be back throughout the playoffs. I know I've said that a million times, but that will be there for you to interact with as well. Aaron Edwards is here to join me on this off day, and Aaron, I thought about having you on, asking if you could come on Thursday night after Game 3, but honestly, I got a little bit nervous. This series, where I want to start is, this series is reminding me the playoffs are exhausting. I think I forgot. I don't think I remembered what it's like. And I will admit to an extreme amount of anxiety during all of yesterday and all the way through basically the end of the second quarter of that game.
Yeah, I think because we ended so brutally last year and it was just gone like that, we kind of just lost the feeling because honestly, I had bad feelings in Game 7. I had them after Game 6 pretty much because it just didn't look right. But I think just because we wanted this team to be so good and we have the high hopes again, I think just being in a stressful situation with this team is kind of throwing us off a little bit. And the rough parts have looked rough. So I think that's where the anxiety comes from.
I also have to apologize to the audience a little bit. I've seen you tweeting about this, so I feel like I have a confidant here, or you can feel what I'm going through. I had an allergy attack right as I was hitting record. And so I did see some people in the YouTube comments getting frustrated with my sniffles. Unfortunately, look, no producer, no co-host. It's just me. I can't exactly do anything about it, but it was a little excessive, and I don't have a cough button like a real radio studio or any of that, so I will cop to that as well. So maybe that contributed. I was on Benadryl for Game 1, and I have not taken that stuff in a while. It really does put you in a space. I kind of overlooked that, and I was like, oh, whatever. I need this. I'm sneezing. I'm not going to be able to survive through Game 1. And then, honestly, it kind of helped with the tension of that game. So I guess I shouldn't complain, but it's been a week. Arizona cannot make up its mind with the weather.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks, I'm shocked I haven't done a sneezing frenzy on one of these episodes because I was going on a 5 in a row sneezing streak a couple of times, and I'm shocked I haven't done it on here.
I straight up used an entire box of tissues on Sunday when Game 1 happened, and that's why the Benadryl needed to be part of it. I did not catch it. For me, it's when I hit that initial sneeze frenzy like you're talking about, or just runny nose, whatever. If it starts, it's already too late, and I missed the window to take the daily allergy stuff. So anyway, that's my apology. But let's get into this game because it was really two-sided, and it's one of those kind of like the Grizzlies-Lakers Game 1 to me, Aaron, where the final score is oh man, the Lakers just killed them. In this case, it's 123-109. The Suns destroyed the Clippers. What a bounce back. But if you watch that game, that is probably not what anybody was saying up until about the end of the third quarter when they built a 7, 8, 9 point lead and then eventually a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. So how much are you pulling from that game that felt real to you? And how much of that game are you pulling that was they squeaked it out. Because I will tell you, I saw Ty Lue in the tunnel after that game. He was just chirping away to an assistant coach, and I know that man has plenty more up his sleeve.
Yeah, I think we learned some stuff about, I mean, it seemed pretty obvious, but I think we learned it in enough time. Like, we learned that drop coverage against this team is really ridiculous, and it's going to put Zoo in really tough situations, and especially with the threat of shooters. So that's why I was really a big proponent of KD, like having the control of the ball or book, because putting Zoo in drop coverage and against like pretty much the two of the best mid-range shooters in the NBA, and they have the other one, I think that puts like a lot of pressure on it. And even they were doing it to us, like Ayton, they were putting pressure on his drop coverage, even though like I really think that he can do switches and put pressure on people that can handle the ball. His feet are still pretty good, and he's quick when he's like engaged. But I think just putting pressure on drop coverage, Monty now knows he can do that. And yeah, it was probably going to be a tough conversation with Chris Paul, even though he even said after the game, just not taking the ball down court, we can get in our actions faster, and it's not like 12 seconds left on the shot clock because he's getting pressed down the court. I think Monty learned that part. I think the drop coverage stuff, I think just in general, like just KD getting doubled and Book just attacking off those single coverages after that, like I think all of that we've learned a lot from them.
Yeah, in the next segment, I want to kind of talk about that swagger that the Suns had, because and in that second half, end of the second quarter, into the second half, you did see some of that stuff where it almost felt like the Suns woke up and realized how many advantages they have. And I thought the most telling quote after the game was Book being like, yeah, you know, Ty Lue is a mastermind with this stuff, and you never know what you're going to face, but he's like, what we learned in 2021 and what we're figuring out right now is like, you just got to get more simple with it. You know, like, to me, the Clippers are really good at kind of like the number one thing you have to try to do in the NBA on defense right now, with how much space, how much talent there is. You have to try your best to be everywhere, right? And like that's what makes Draymond so good. That's what makes Giannis so good, is the guys who can have the IQ and athleticism and everything to take up space and basically make, you know, it's like the Sam Darnold thing, right? Like you make the offense see ghosts, even though you're not actually everywhere. It feels like you are. The Clippers are good at that too, but the way to combat that is to have awesome players and just beat those defenses kind of one-on-one or two-on-one, two-on-two situations. That's what they were able to do. I agree on the drop coverage. I think that Ty Lue is, you know, a bad half away from going small finally, which would be nice for the Suns.
I heard that Batum played 41 minutes at center this year, so I can see them doing it.
Yeah, but the crazy thing with that is Batum has not looked very good to me in this series.
He hasn't.
guarding the smaller guys, which is like, that's the point of playing small, is if you have a center who can theoretically try to guard the smaller guys, you can just switch everything. I'm not really sure if he's up for that, so it makes me wonder about Covington or Morris. But setting that aside, and this isn't even an Ayton thing, but I have the question for you. We saw Durant at center a little bit. Would you go more onto that? Because there's also the question of that being a chess move that the Suns could go to simplify things even more. Just run Durant, Booker pick and roll, Chris Paul, Durant pick and roll, whatever. But these guys are also in the mid-40s in minutes, and I think that's one of the other things coming off this game that can't be overlooked.
Yeah, I think Ayton, like he crashed the glass, but I think he was crashing the last game. I think our guards, like Chris Paul, was crashing the glass and like all that. So I think Ayton, like I think he played really well yesterday. So I don't think we're gonna go KD at center unless it's like we really have to, or foul trouble for Ayton, which that kind of was. So I think like if anything, we're just gonna have to, like, he's gonna hold back on doing that until, even when the Warriors used to do the death lineup and stuff, it was kind of a really needing to do it, a necessity kind of thing. And I think that's how Monty's probably gonna use that too.
I think that's fair. Last thing here, Chris Paul, do you trust what we saw at the end of the game, or do you think that it'll still be up and down?
I think up and down. I think just not asking him to do too much. And we have just two dudes that can handle the ball. I think we're still acting like we don't want to have point Book anymore. And Mikal can't do it yet. And he's still learning how to do it. And Cam Johnson can't do it yet. and Jay Crowder has to do it. We're still leaning toward that, and I think Chris Paul just kind of needs to ease the reins, and he still like has that mindset like he's on the court with those guys. But no, it's Book and KD. Like they can take the ball down the court. You're fine.
Yeah, I think the mix was good, to be honest with you. Like, I liked the fact that they started the game with more of the basic, they got Durant a couple of elbow touches. They had Booker Ayton pick and roll working pretty well. Some of that stuff. They had a Durant Ayton pick and roll where Russ fouled Durant. All of that in the first quarter, mixing it up. And then if Chris Paul is feeling comfortable, it's pretty nice to have that ability late in a game to just run your bread and butter pick and roll with two guys spacing the floor who the defense can't play off of even a single inch. Like I know people were tweeting, Chris Paul front runner stuff, which is funny, and I get that separate, not even related to strategy. It's just funny. But then there's also the people who are like, really, you're putting the ball in his hands to close the game. It's like, can't really argue with the results. Guys making shots, and Durant and Booker being in the mid 40s in minutes, and Durant missing a couple wide open threes leading up to that. It's like, I don't think those guys were complaining.
Yeah, KD hits those wide open threes, and the game's over a lot quicker. So I think if he's going to get wide open shots like that because Chris Paul has the rock and they're scared to leave Book because he's hot right now, and you can't leave Ayton. And I think putting the pressure on people like that with him is fine, but I think it's always going to be more pressure on the defense if KD or Book has the ball in there.
Absolutely. All right. It sounds like we're in agreement that it's not going to be pure deja vu. They did figure some things out. Chris Paul, Monty Williams, not so stubborn. Talk about a little bit more of that as we preview Game 3 to close out the show. But I want to talk about the swagger, the confidence, and sort of the dominance that I think the Suns started to realize they can have on this series. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With their eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time. Just add your ride to your garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Coming back here with Aaron Edwards, talking about dominance versus deja vu. That's kind of the way that I was conceptualizing this, Aaron. We talked a little bit about how the Suns avoided the deja vu in that first half, started to figure some things out, putting the ball in the right guy's hands, not looking so lost and aimless. I honestly think some of that was defensively too, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. You shouted out Ayton being a lot better, I thought, in that second half, especially coming on the hard, kind of like traps on the drives that Kawhi was doing, kind of like a double, but once he started to dribble the ball, and then same thing out on the perimeter in the pick and roll, either doubling or hedging on him, and that really helped them just get control of the game in addition to the offensive stuff. But to me, there was also a level of that swagger that I think we started to see. A lot of people have talked about, like, it was a way to realize the game plan in the second half was them just sort of realizing, like, we have more power, more star power than the Clippers do. And, like, let's attack Kawhi Leonard on defense and let's use our superstars on offense. And that's what playoff basketball can be sometimes. But we all know how this team has looked in the past, right? And they can lean on some of those bad habits. And I also think there's that factor of Durant and Booker getting tired. So do you think they can rise to the level of just like coming out in Game 3 and just running exactly what they know is going to work, and just like, is there a blowout win in this team? I think is the best way to ask what I'm saying.
I think if they can start off well, like when we were going on that run in Game 1, I think we were in the midst of blowing it open. I really thought we were, until that really bad substitution, and it just like all fell apart. So I think there have been times where it seems like we're just going to blow this open and it'll like we can finally sit them. And people were saying, like, when Monty made that substitution, like, they're booking KD, they're like at 35 minutes. Like, they would end up being at 44, which they ended up playing yesterday anyway. So I think that the minutes are always going to just no matter how they get to them, it's always just going to get there anyway. So if anything, I think if they start off better, it puts less pressure on the bench. Because when the bench comes in, they've been in really rough spots. It hasn't been their fault. The second they get subbed in, they're down 7, down 8, and they have to try to hold on and not give up an even bigger lead. So I think if we can give the bench an actual lead going into some of these games instead of putting them in rough spots, then yeah, they can get the rest that they need, and we could probably blow a game or two open.
I agree with you. I think the other thing about those lineups too, I was criticizing them just as much as anybody. I do feel like the other part of it that wasn't mentioned is, yeah, it was Booker as the only scorer, Booker as the only starter. But the other part is they were doing that a lot when Kawhi was still on the court. It's you can get away with that when the Clippers are having Russ or Gordon or Powell be their primary scorer, primary creator. You can't do that when Kawhi is out there with spacing because he's just going to keep scoring. I mean, you really at any point he's in the game, he's going to keep scoring. So if you put a bad offensive lineup out there, you're just asking for the lead to get bigger. It's just a matter of how much, right? How much ground do the Clippers gain? It's not if, it's how much. So I agree. Am I the only one worried about the minutes? It sounds like I might be.
I think, well, they've had rest. This is, and that's what they were saying about Kawhi. This is why you load manage. This is the way he looks right now. He looks incredible, and this is what load management does. He has fresh legs. He's playing incredible. I really am worried every time he's on the court. Torrey Craig is working his ass off, but he's just on one right now. And I think that's why you do this. KD's had a ton of rest. He didn't play many games this year. Book, he had a ton of rest. I think this is why you do the rest stuff, is so you're ready for right now.
It's true. And the Suns didn't do it as egregiously, right? It's not the same thing as what the Clippers do with Kawhi, but they did it. I think both times Chris Paul got injured, he probably could have come back earlier. James Jones told us Kevin Durant would have been playing the entire 3 weeks he was out. If it was the playoffs, he told us that the day after the injury. And Devin Booker, I think the same, right? They tried to bring him back a little bit too early when it was just the hamstring. Then on Christmas, it's the groin, and he's out for a while after that. I don't think he needed to be out for that long. They were being careful despite losing and having it look really ugly. They knew that there was a bigger sort of task at hand. Don't know what that task at hand looks like if it's John Collins right now, if I'm being completely honest, but Kevin Durant makes that task a little bit easier. On the Torrey Craig note, we're getting 2021 Torrey Craig in this series, and I think that's really been huge. I mean, 5 of 7 from three is no joke. He's not exactly a sharpshooter, but if he's making those and they're going to leave him as open as they are, great. Couple of examples of what I'm talking about with the dominance, the kind of swagger, cockiness that I think we started to see. I heard, I was listening to the PHNX show on my way home. They were, because this isn't a huge criticism of them, but Saul and Espo were really nervous, worried about Eric Gordon. They're like, he's going to keep shooting this well. He's going to come home. This is going to be a big problem. They were leaving him open on purpose. The doubles were coming off of Eric Gordon onto Kawhi Leonard. And maybe some of that's just smart placement by Lou to know, or just the players on the court to say, hey, let's make the double come off of Gordon because he's our best shooter. You never know what the chess moves all are that are leading to it. But point is, the Suns were okay with that. That's pretty aggressive to me. That's, he's the best shooter on the team and they're fine leaving him wide open. That says something to me, that they feel like if they can make Kawhi beat them, Kawhi give up the ball, try to play as a passer, they're comfortable with that math, knowing the scoring power that they have. And I would say, too, on the other side, I talked about how the defensive stuff is basically in 2023, just try to be everywhere. The Clippers are great at that, but there's a certain level of swarming that happens, and you could really see, I think, the Suns, especially Durant and Booker, starting to take advantage of that over-aggressiveness. Finding shooters, a lot of the Torrey Craig threes, that help was coming from the strong side, which, I know it's Torrey Craig, so maybe those rules get thrown off a little bit, but still, you give that guy, a veteran in the NBA who made close to 40% of his threes this year, that wide open of a three with that easy of a pass, you're asking for it. And the Suns were very comfortable finding that pass, I thought, as the game went along. It started like this. It seemed like they were starting to figure some things out. And then I feel like they were just realizing, like, as long as we're not thrown off by this Ty Lue stuff, it's beatable. I think half of it is just the deception of it, right? Like, I don't know what he was doing where the Suns were so ready for this in the third quarter when Zubac started guarding Torrey Craig. Ty Lue put Kawhi Leonard on Deandre Ayton to try to say, if you set a screen with Ayton, I'll have Kawhi switch onto you. The Suns said, all right, we'll put Ayton in the dunker spot. Kawhi can just not be involved in the defensive play. You know what I mean? Great. Get him out of there. And then they ran a screen with Craig. They ran ISOs. They ran whatever, and they just were scoring a ton with their best guys. So some of it is just like, maybe it just did take, 5-6 quarters for them to get their heads in it and realize, like, let's not act like this team is some sort of Star Destroyer, like crazy, the rebels in Star Wars beating everybody down with a bunch of, battered bodies and everything. Like, we can beat this team. So I liked a lot of that stuff, and it felt like if you're looking at what kind of switch flipped or whatever, I think that's what you would point to.
Yeah, I think that's the flip, and that's the switch. And they couldn't guard the high pick and roll when it was starting with KD. Like, they were having to. Zubac was dropping hard, and KD was just getting like 8-foot jumper every time. Like, he was getting there because Zubac was just running with Ayton, and he just couldn't make the decision. And once you get KD past the free throw line, it's pretty much a bucket every time. And I think he hit 3 in a row where it was just having to make a tough decision on staying high or getting Ayton. And
Zubac can't really even contest his shot, even if he is right there, because he's like the same height as Zubac, which is crazy. Yeah,
like that.
I think the other part of it too is, like, when the ball wasn't in his hands, it wasn't just stand in the corner, right? Yeah. He was setting screens. He was coming off of those elbow pin downs with Ayton. And it's like, that's a perfect way to say, okay, we know it's tiring to have the ball in Durant's hands, and they're doing a good job, the Clippers are, of disrupting his dribble, Russ especially, Gordon even at times, just making his rhythm off. So ball's going to be in Booker or Paul's hands, but Durant's still going to be featured as a scorer rather than just being a spacer. And I thought that was another easy kind of fix too, which is part of why I wasn't worried after game one, is like, we know what the things were. They just didn't do them for some reason. It felt like they kind of came in a mind crunch, and now it was like, all right, take a breath. You guys can beat this team,
Yeah, and you can kind of see it in the fourth quarter yesterday when I think Kawhi hit that 3, and we're like, God, we were just about to put him away, and he hit that really tough 3. And I think KD went 2 possessions without touching it. And he was just adamant. He didn't do that game one. He was like, give me the ball. He wasn't taking any of the crap after that. He was just like, give it to me. And he got a bucket, and he made a really perfect pass to Torrey Craig after. And I think just that assertiveness, he still needs to get comfortable with the team that way. But you can just tell, he was like, no 6 minutes without shooting the ball, no 6 minutes without touching the ball. This isn't happening again. And he was really assertive after that Kawhi 3. He was like, give me the ball. And we're going to need that from him.
Yeah, the crazy thing, too, I mean, talk about adjustments that are kind of obvious. It's like Durant hasn't even cracked 30 in this series. He hasn't even cracked 20 field goal attempts, And, when you talk about minutes, that's one part of it. He's defending Leonard a bit. That's tiring. But these guys also, they're veterans right now. Booker this is his third playoffs. There is a way of pacing yourself even when you are playing a lot where you're not necessarily having to expend. We talked about the end of the game where those guys didn't have to score. Durant, pacing himself in that way, I think is smart too. There is still that supernova version of Kevin Durant, we've seen a million times in the playoffs, that just hasn't come yet, and that always will be there in a do or die situation. You got to just hope you don't ever get to those, at least not early in series. All right, let's talk about Game 3 specifically. What can we expect? What might change? All of that after one more quick break. All right, we're back, closing out, previewing Game 3 specifically. We've talked about a lot of things that the Suns can keep doing, a lot of things maybe that they can avoid from Game 1. Not to say they were perfect in Game 2, but that second half was pretty close to it, I think. Let's go to the Clippers side, though, Aaron, because we talked about Batum. That's the first place my mind goes from a rotation standpoint. But again, to reiterate, I think it's a bad combo for the Clippers right now to have Batum playing poorly and to have them seeming like it might make sense for them to try going small. Do you think we see... Ty Lue said at the beginning of the series he saw a role for Marcus Morris. He could have just been BSing us, but we know he likes Marcus Morris. He played him way more than Clippers fans wanted him to the past few years, so obviously it's not like he's a bad player or Ty Lue doesn't see value in him or whatever. He's somebody I could see coming back. Does there feel like anything else? It doesn't even have to be super deep because I know we're not, Clippers experts here, but even just from players who haven't played their best, who you're worried about or anything like that, what kind of would you expect we see from the Clippers as they come home too?
They say benches play better at home, unless you're us. But I can see their bench playing well. I think we still haven't had like that Powell game. Like he can go off, and he's an elite foul baiter, and I think that game is gonna come where he gets to the line a ton and he just ruins like the pace of the game, and he just like stops the clock. I think that's more what I'm worried about is a guy like him in a home stand, like just really going off and attacking our bench and getting to the line a ton.
Paul George was working out pregame, or not pregame, before shoot around on Tuesday. He's not supposed to play. Is that just them putting him in front of the cameras, knowing there's going to be media in there just to try to scare the Suns?
Yeah, I mean, Ty Lue's like, he's a vet. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing. Like, he played for Phil Jackson. He knows exactly what he's doing. Like, if you can just put that in their head even a little bit, then yeah, it's going to be in there.
What's that conversation like? All right, Paul. He had all this stuff like taped to his body. He's shirtless if you watch the videos. Put all this stuff on. We know you could work out wherever, but can you do this while the cameras are out there for like 20 minutes and then you can go back and get treatment and like, we'll see you next season. But for right now, could you please like what, I don't know. That's the part of it where I'm like, it's funny to imagine, but it's also like a human being. I don't know. I don't think he's going to play in 3 or 4 for sure. I could see if the series goes long, if he's already far enough along to be doing a workout, that tells me it's not like he's hobbling around, but still, there's a lot of steps between workouts and playing an NBA playoff game. We'll see. I think Powell is a good thing to point to. I think we'll get less Bones Highland, so that's another reason I feel like we could get more of the other guys. Ty Lue was asked about Bones pregame. He's so blunt. He's such a funny guy. Like, he was like, yeah, we need him to score. That's basically all we know he's really going to do. We'll see how it goes. And then it didn't go well. So it's like, I don't know if he'll play, if he didn't really do the thing he needed to do. I think if Cam Payne comes back, that would be obviously huge. Whenever he comes back, which I think he will. I don't think this is going to be long term. It'll just help the bench so much. As much as complaining as we're doing about the bench here, watching this team and it not doing anything, I totally get that. But, Payne is the best playmaker and maybe the most confident spot-up shooter on the bench, and they don't have either one of those qualities right now, so I could see that. Ayton was in foul trouble in this game. I could see them, just going to him more, him having a better impact on the game if he's able to be in rhythm. I know people pointed to that second quarter stretch where he was just keeping them alive with floaters and mid-range shots. I think the Clippers will live with that, frankly, but you can't argue with the results. He's making those shots great. I'd like to see him start driving again. Remember what he looked like in that New Orleans series last year. I don't know where that ability went. I don't know why it disappeared after that series.
I feel like he hasn't shot a free throw yet in the series. So, yeah, I think that him just putting pressure on them, especially if they go small, that's what I want to see. If they're really going to go small and you get that Batum switch, like, abuse them. Get to the line. Like, and we're usually really good at that. I remember last year when we played the Warriors and they went really small and Ayton was just going at Draymond because he was just small. And I want Ayton to attack just the switches just like that, or when somebody goes small.
So last night's game had, let me see here. Cleaning the Glass has it as Suns had 92 offensive possessions in that game, which is really, really good. They had a 132 offensive rating. I mean, it's starting once again to look like the Durant numbers from the regular season, where it just doesn't even feel real. But they had 101 possessions in game 1, so only 92 last night. I think they should keep running. I think they should keep pushing. I think that's when they look their best. Obviously, getting a miss or a turnover is the best way to run. But even when they don't, even if it's just, a missed layup or something that's not a traditional fast break transition opportunity, or even a made bucket in some cases, just push the pace. That's another place that Payne will help, but also putting the ball in Booker or Durant's hands, because we all know they're a lot more likely to run than Mr. Paul is, which is, you're not going to argue or hope for anything different at this point.
I think that's a Okogie thing too. With Torrey Craig starting, like Okogie would get the offensive rebound or defensive rebound and just go. And I think Craig doesn't do that, or he doesn't feel comfortable doing that. So we really only have two, maybe Book and maybe KD on the floor that's willing to push the pace after a rebound. But with Okogie, he was always 100 miles per hour. So I can see how the pace probably slows down with Torrey Craig out there. Yeah,
I think you're right. Okogie looked a lot more energetic. I would expect him to keep getting rhythm. If he can get more than 10 minutes at least, that would help. Another quick thing on foul trouble. I talked about Ayton, but the Suns were able to get Westbrook two fouls in the first quarter last night because he was guarding their best players. And if that's going to continue to be the case, then they should be looking to get him in foul trouble. If he's guarding you run a pick and roll, drive to the basket, especially Durant. If KD's in the paint, Russ is doing nothing except for fouling him, right? So if you can get that situation, then you should try to get him. Even if it's not, 5 fouls in the game, it's just get him out of rhythm, make him sit early, affect Ty Lue's rotation, things like that. That can be really helpful. But I mean, honestly, to me, if they can get Durant some of those inside mid-range opportunities off of those screens, if they can continue to have the ball in Booker and KD's hands, if Chris Paul can let it fly more than he did from 3-point range, that'll be even better. And, Ayton, foul trouble, not that big of a deal. But offensively, they're impossible to stop, even with the team that has Kawhi Leonard, if they're playing like they did last night. And it's why I picked them in 5. I don't necessarily think it'll be 5 anymore, but they reminded us what they can do. I won't make you give us a prediction, but how are you feeling? Are you feeling good, bad?
Oh, yeah. I'm feeling good. All this stuff, game 1 was pretty simple, and it was winnable, and that's why everybody was so angry after, because it was such a simple reason why we lost. So I think just having that in that situation be so simple in the first half, even yesterday, it was just do the thing we all know that you're supposed to be doing. I think that's probably why everybody was frustrated, just because it just seemed so easy. Just play basketball, and they weren't doing that. They were kind of just trying to do algebra out there. And yeah, I think once they figure out that it's simple, you have 2 of the greatest scorers in the NBA on the floor, then put pressure on the defense, then do that. And they started to do that.
Agreed. They are 2.5-point favorites on the road. 7:30 tip-off Thursday night. They are minus 136 to win the game. The lines keep favoring the Suns, and I think that's contributing to the anxiety. Just be an underdog at home on the road like everybody else, please. Just cut it out. But look, they're the more talented team, and don't think Paul George's return is on the horizon. We'll see if the shooters shoot better. We'll see if the role players play better. Ty Lue will have things up his sleeve, but as long as the Suns keep hitting what they hit on Tuesday, they should be all right. That'll wrap us up. Everydayers, I'll be back as soon as Thursday night's game hits the buzzer with a recap show, giving you everything you need to know from Game 3. Close out the week that way. In the meantime, check out Locked On Sports Today. Make that your second listen, and I'll catch you guys after the buzzer.